While the president has not exactly responded to warning signs at the ballot box, his administration did make moves to address an alarmed bond market. I've told you this over and over. The bond market is his true daddy. That has seen long-term yields go up in response to the war in Iran and concern over the ballooning national debt, which in turn has made it more expensive for businesses and individuals to borrow money and families to get mortgages so they can buy a new home. I want to get back to the group chat. Peter, let's talk about this. The bond market is the measure for Trump, right? And we actually saw Scott Bessent make moves yesterday to try to lower things. And the market already today is saying, we're worried about these risks.
Look, to your point, the bond market is the reason that Trump blinked initially on the Liberation Day tariffs, if you remember, after stock markets recoiled to the tune of $5 trillion in the span of a week. The bond market gets his attention because if there's one thing Donald Trump, the failed casino magnate, understands, it's that borrowing costs really matter. But the fact that Bessent intervened and we still saw interest rates go back up tells you that the whole attempt to undermine the independence of the Fed in the name of, getting your hands on the piggy banking, lowering borrowing costs for everyone is failed. It's dead on arrival because the Fed doesn't control interest rates. The market controls interest rates, and the markets writ large, and we're talking about, investment pools around the world are looking at far more than the ballooning deficit, the $40 trillion long-term debt in the United States. They're looking at basic institutional competence and fitness. They're looking at the fact that we can't go to a fast food restaurant without worrying about getting poisoned. They're looking at the fact that at one of the largest airports in the world, Newark, we don't have enough air traffic controllers, and we're worrying that there's nobody out there, so we're taking off. I have heard again and again from people who actually control money around the globe that we don't know who's running your country anymore. We don't know if there are adults supervising the basic institutions, and that is a long-term fact that goes far beyond Trump.
But here's a bigger issue than that. We don't know who's running the country. The answer is whomever is writing the president the biggest check. Okay, yesterday, the president had the biggest names in the crypto industry at the White House. Those who have given his ballroom or his crypto empire millions and millions of dollars, right? Business leaders in the crypto industry who had been facing DOJ investigations that disappeared when Trump took office. His family has made billions of dollars, as have other people in the administration, and he's now pushing Congress to lighten up even more on regulating the industry. Do the American people see this? Do they care? Because investors see more and more. Some say, well, this is great. You need something from Trump. Write a check, get it done. But that's a dangerous, dangerous game to play, and people see that.
Oh, absolutely. And people are fed up. I mean, you're going to spend $15.5 billion to renovate Dulles. You've made billions. Your family's made billions, and we're trying to put food on the table, trying to figure out how we're going to buy clothes for our kids for the beginning of school. I mean, it's very clear that the corruption is mind-boggling. This makes Grant's administration and Harding's administration look like romper room. I'm waiting for the B to come out. I just dated myself. Right? But the point is that I don't understand, and maybe you guys can help me understand this. Why are so many folk allowing the corruption, allowing the grift? Because he's doing it right in front of our faces. They are doing it.
Business community, listen, corporate profits are soaring. We now have corporations who are getting paid tens of millions of dollars in refunds from the tariffs, but the American consumer isn't, right? Target just revised their guidance upward because they're getting these big tariff dollars. And if you go back to school shopping there, they ain't having a tariff refund sale. But when the president goes to Nevada, he comes back with no tax on tips. Do taglines like that still work with the American voter when at the end of the day, the tax cuts truly benefited the wealthiest and the biggest corporations out there?
So I underestimated, I think, in 2024, Stephanie, how much the no tax on tips would resonate with some of the key constituencies in the Democratic Party, what a big labor state we are, a service industry. And I think that helped Trump win the state. But I think in Nevada and elsewhere, there's a lot of buyer's remorse now because they're not seeing the benefits that they were promised during the campaign. And instead, they're seeing, thanks to a lot of great reporting, by the way, how much money Trump is making, how he's helping his friends. I mean, in the before times, you know this better than I, Stephanie, Trump was very negative about crypto. And then suddenly,
called it a scam.
Yeah, and then suddenly he sees an opportunity to make money for himself and his friends. And by the way, Trump was just in Nevada a few weeks ago, and you had this remarkable scene that Democrats were very excited about, where he called the Republican governor, Joe Lombardo, up onto the stage, and Lombardo, who is not great in an unscripted environment, started talking about how people are so mean to Donald Trump about helping his billionaire friends, but his billionaire friends help create jobs, so they shouldn't be mean to his billionaire friends. Now, you can imagine how the Democratic ad makers were thinking of that specific soundbite, but it's such a tone-deaf thing to say in this environment, and I think people are making the connection between their own economic struggles and the fact that Trump is enriching himself, his family, and his billionaire friends.
When are Republicans lawmakers going to see this? Because Trump is doing this so blatantly and so brazenly right out there in the open. He doesn't, right? One could say, well, he's a lame duck president. He doesn't feel lame in any way. By the time he leaves office, right, he's on the way to becoming one of the richest people on the planet, Vladimir Putin style, right? People always said Don Jr. is going to run for president. A very close ally to the president said, he's running to be worth $50 billion. Yet Republican lawmakers are out there trying to win the midterms, giving stump speeches while he's laughing about affordability. Do they not realize they are going to be the butt of this joke?
I don't know. I think many of them may be thinking about, how am I going to get access to the bag? I don't know, given the...
That's true.
So I don't want to be locked out. I'm going to pay this $60,000 or $100,000 to get a tweet or truth post, whatever the hell it is,
correct,
before it happens. But the interesting thing about it, to go back to our first segment, we're talking about the isms of socialism and communism when crony capitalism is running rampant. When capitalism in this form seems to be broken, and the boogeyman is actually folk talking about Medicare for all, folk talking about living wage, folk talking about being able to give their children a future that's better than their own. My God, look at this.
I think it's fair to assume that in the same way in which the financial CEOs in the run-up to the great financial crisis didn't really care about the institutional fitness of their institutions. They cared about the next quarter. They cared about their bonus check. Trump doesn't really seem to care that much about the prospects for his party, right?
Okay, but hold on. I know I'm out of time, but then this is the more important question. We know that Trump doesn't, because he's going to run away with the bag.
Sure.
But these CEOs are still going to have their jobs in 3 weeks, 3 months, they hope in 3 years.
I don't know. You think Jamie Dimon's going to have his job? Like, he's going to have cashed out?
Okay, Jamie Dimon has been in that seat for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind that he has not said boo when it comes to Trump selling these Truth Social posts. He has said nothing.
Tim Cook.
Jeff Bezos is outspoken saying Joe Biden doesn't understand inflation, and they're saying absolutely nothing. And my question to them is, are you not looking at the polls? Are you not seeing what's about to happen 6 months from now?
Pivot if somebody else takes over. They pivoted before from stakeholder capitalism and embracing DEI when that was fashionable to now pivoting against woke 1.0, whatever that is. I mean, they'll pivot. It's opportunity and fear. That's how Trump keeps the business people in line.
I hear you. I see you. But I'm telling you, the Occupy Wall Street movement that took place in 2007 and 2008, and people are sitting down in front of the New York Stock Exchange playing banjos. Yeah. They don't have banjos this time. They have flipping pitchforks.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true. And, and then you think about, you add to that, Stephanie, the disruption that AI is generating in terms of our relationship to labor. What's happening on the ground at the bottom, right? Doesn't bode well for a lot of these folks.
And excuse me, 2011 when it comes to Occupy Wall Street. But think about this. States like Nevada, after the financial crisis, after the housing crisis, are still suffering. When that bubble burst, your state was hit one of the worst. So when we say, companies are going to pivot, I know that the richest people in America are doing so well, and they'll pivot, things will be fine. People who are suffering are angrier than I think we've ever seen, at least in my lifetime. Don't we think this would be a time when the people on top would start to read the room and say, we got to address this. This K-shaped economy is going to end very badly.
Well, I think what Peter was saying is absolutely right, is they always find a way to adjust to new circumstances and continue to make money. So they don't worry.
Okay, they can always adjust to new circumstances when we're in polite company.
Right.
And people are saying please and thank you and holding doors for one another. Ain't nobody holding a door when they don't have a house.
But if you I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say real quickly to go back on what I said about primaries and general elections. One thing that does translate is the populist uprising that's occurring, what you're talking about, people being very, very angry. That is the reason that some of these candidates won, and that is going to
And that is
carry
the
over.
reason Donald Trump won the first time. So this populist uprising transcends
It's a boomerang.
political parties.
It's a boomerang.
Look,
now.
I hear you, but if you're looking at why the executive class is continuing to go along,
They got to play ball.
I mean, look, if you're going to run an economy over decades where it's about profit maximization and it's
Yes.
quarter by quarter, don't be surprised when the CEOs only look toward the next quarter. And any CEO who today says, well, I'm going to take a stand against the attack
They're
on
dead.
the independence
They're
of the Fed or
killed.
the
Yeah.
firing of the Bureau of Labor Statistics chief or whatever, yeah, they're gone. So they're not wrong. They're cynical. They're opportunistic. We can call them out for being cowards, but they're not wrong to say these are the incentives. And you know what? If I take on Donald Trump and I say, well, you know, the tariff war is bad for America and you're making the price of eggs go up, not down in Nevada and everywhere else, I'm out of a job. Somebody else has got my job and they're playing ball at Mar-a-Lago.
Hate the game, not the player.
And there's
I get
never
it.
been a president who was, they know this, the CEOs, who's willing to use the power of the